So, how's it going? How's your day going?
It's going good. It's been, I got a haircut and I left with my hair wet and freaked out because for a minute I thought I wasn't going to like it. And then it dried and I liked it. So,
Oh yeah. No, I need a haircut
so,
too. I don't
oh,
normally let my
really
hair
good.
get this long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. Keep it.
Yeah. You have red hair.
I do.
Why?
Why? It's not natural. So everyone can just like get over any
Oh,
disappointment they feel about that. Yeah.
oh, fair
Um,
enough. So you're not a real
it's
ginger.
I'm not. No, I'm not a natural redhead, but I'm definitely a natural at being a redhead.
Hmm.
So it works well for me. I've had it for over 10 years at this point in time. So it's kind of difficult. You have to go pretty far back in the internet archive to find a photo of me without red hair. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I went 8 years back and I saw you on your YouTube thing,
oh
up
God.
north photography.
Oh,
It
way up
wasn't your
north.
thing, but you had at least I think you had an episode in it.
Yeah, what that was I'm a wedding photographer. That's what I do for like that's what actually pays the bills.
Yes.
Comedy is not incredibly lucrative at this point in time. But
Fair enough.
I also have spoken at some wedding photography conferences, like I've gone to I think 6 countries so far doing that, but that was
Oh, so that's what
a
that
comp
was.
yeah, that
Okay,
was a
well, let's
conference
really
over in
quickly, let's
Rome.
just say
Yeah.
your stuff though, because so we're not promoting other people's stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yes, Heather Jowett, is that how you pronounce your
Hmm.
last name?
Well done. Yes, most
Okay,
people go Joette and they
sweet.
make it fancier than it is. Yeah,
Good
but
that I can
Jowett is
pronounce a
correct.
British last name when I am British.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, your Instagram is Heather J every day. You've got like comedy clips up there and seems like some other photography and stuff like that. And then you have a
yeah,
website, heatherjowett.com.
yeah. That's all. That's all. If you go there, there will be nothing comedy related. It will be me trying to convince you to hire me to photograph your wedding.
No,
Um, so,
fair enough, fair
so
enough. Well, yeah,
yeah,
thanks so much for coming on the show.
yeah. Right on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is episode 124, I think. I was hoping it would be one,
Okay.
two, three, but
Yeah.
124 because you have like all those disorders and things that you like to talk about. OCD. I was going to ask you what
I
AU.
don't have
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't have OCD. No, I have.
Oh,
I'm autistic and ADHD. So
ADHD.
yeah, ADHD is how that's often like abbreviated. I come from a psychology background, so I have a bachelor's in psychology from the University of Michigan, which is a really good school for psychology. And so the autism and ADHD are incredibly comorbid, meaning they show up in the same person quite often. So I think it's something like maybe a 70% comorbidity rate. So if you're autistic, you likely could be ADHD or vice
Yeah.
versa. And please fact check me on those
Kind of
because
like
I
being
am
obese
not good at.
and getting COVID.
Yeah. Well, I think anyone could have gotten COVID, but dying of COVID,
Oh
yes.
yeah, sorry, dying. That was what I meant to say. See, I
Yeah.
fucked it up. That's why I'm not fucking stand up.
You had to go just a little bit darker. Yeah. So,
Yes, a little darker. Psychology. Wow. I guess that's why
yeah.
you're so diagnosed. I know. I thought I heard one of your
I,
clips on Instagram. I didn't go through it
oh, I have
intense, but I
medical
thought one of the
OCD,
clips
which
you
is
were
just,
saying that you were
yeah.
OCD.
Yeah, not medical OCDs, which basically just means I have like a little touch of hypochondria.
Oh, so
Yeah,
medical OC. Oh, medical OCD. I see. Oh,
yeah. It's
hypochondriac.
just like
Yeah,
it's just like it's basically the same thing as hypochondria. I don't
yeah,
know why they
yeah.
they
I
every
feel
now and
like
again things get a rebrand.
yeah, fair enough. I feel though like you were kind of just making a shtick joke there. Like, do you actually have that pretty severely?
I regularly, if we're going to define it as intrusive thoughts that are related to like a fear of something being wrong with your health, I definitely have periods of time in my life
Oh,
where
fair enough. I really
that's
like
a real
that. So,
yeah.
like, because I feel like you can get into the character stuff and start making jokes about stuff that's not entirely not real. But like,
Yeah.
I really respect, and this is why I like Jordan Jensen so much. I
Hmm.
really respect comedians that actually they make jokes about themselves that are real. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Um I
Authenticity.
I really admire Mike Birbiglia for anyone who likes him. And one of the things that he says all the time is like something along the lines of like, if you're not telling secrets, then what's the point? And
Yeah,
so I think that's one of the things that's so incredible about stand up is you can take something that maybe would be a secret, something that you would feel shame about, like, worrying that the pain in your ribs is lung cancer for 3 months and then getting an x-ray and finding out, no, 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 you're fine. I did find out that I am skinny enough to only need to be on one of the x-ray panels instead of two. So that was a great thing to find out.
nice.
Paid a couple $100 for that, for the privilege of finding that out, but did not, uh, just some regular old rib inflammation. But anyways, but I think there's something really powerful about being able to take stand up and take something that maybe makes you a little bit embarrassed or makes you weird or different and just make light of it, because we all have those things. Like
For sure.
if anyone is pretending like they don't have some sort of neuroses existing inside of here, then honestly I probably don't want to have dinner with that
Yeah,
person.
don't
Sounds
trust
pretty.
that person.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have some things like that too where I judge people by like small things like I don't judge a guy who doesn't wear hats or like what else? I can't think of any other ones right now. So you said you had some rib inflammation that you thought was
yeah.
lung cancer? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's I knew that it was probably, they call it costochondritis. It's just literally inflammation in the connective tissue in your rib. Another thing that's really common among people who are autistic is weird things with their connective tissue. Like I can pop my knuckles off of, or my tendons off of my knuckles, and there's just like a lot of, we're just like scratching the surface in terms of like research and really understanding what it means to be autistic. But yeah, I literally just had this pain in my rib for maybe like a month and a half, and my doctor's like, it's costochondritis, that's like really common, and especially like white women in your age range, it can be really common for them to develop it or whatever. Plus I smoke weed, so I'm like coughing maybe
Oh,
more than the average person.
of
And so
course. Me too.
yeah.
I have the same fucking problem.
Yeah.
I cough so much. Like I was worried that I had like I don't know what it was, COPD or something like that.
Yeah.
What's that called again? Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought I
yeah, I
had
think so.
that.
Yeah.
So
Make yourself some mullein tea. That's I'm
oh yeah,
making herbal tea to help your lungs.
I
But
would. I just don't drink many hot beverages. Like I feel like
mm,
that would benefit me a lot to have tea more. But then like I
yeah.
just drink beer. I got to find a way to like warm up beer maybe and like just drink it warm. Like maybe that'll be the
I think,
solution.
I don't know. That sounds very European.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
well, but yeah, I thought podcast with you would be really fun. Like, not to not to label you as more of a
Hmm.
liberal or a Democrat or anything like that, but I do feel that like we have lots to talk about, and it's almost like a little bit of a bridge between, even if you can call it two different echo chambers that we might be in, because not
Yeah.
whether or not you're liberal or whether or not I'm conservative.
Well,
And
I'll label myself really quickly. I'm beyond liberal. I'm like a full blown leftist. I think
oh yeah,
everything about modern society is probably ill adapted to the human organism, and
fair enough.
not really good for our nervous systems, or these like,
Yeah,
we forget we're animals.
yeah,
But yeah, so
for
I'll
sure.
label myself and say, please don't call me a Democrat. I would,
Yeah,
because I'm a leftist and I
yeah.
don't want to be associated with them. So yeah,
Okay. Oh, fair enough then. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So Democrat is different than that, is what you're telling me.
Democrats are like, I mean, in America, our political system is so far to the right that even our liberal party, which is the Democrats, looks nothing like a true leftist party would look in let's say like France or even Canada, so it's just like Democrats are just, as far as I see it, like the primary difference between like Republicans and Democrats is just like, uh, Democrats or like Republicans are like, we're gonna uphold the military-industrial complex and commit atrocities worldwide and hate gay people, and then Democrats are like, we're gonna uphold the military-industrial complex and commit atrocities worldwide, but let's all go to the Pride Parade. Like
Yeah.
that's like, to me, the primary difference between the two of them. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
crazy how
so
different
yeah.
political systems can be, like, even let's say, like, across the world. Like, I remember when
Mm-hmm.
I found out that the Taliban was like just a political party
Yeah.
within like Afghanistan or Pakistan or one of them. And I was like, wait, I thought it was like a terrorist organization.
Yeah, and
And
my government gave them guns.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so where are you from? Sorry.
So I live in Detroit. So I'm right across. I was literally just looking at Windsor.
Yeah, you're
To
almost
quote,
Canadian.
yeah, I can see Canada from my house.
There you go.
But
That's cool.
I'm from Yorktown, Virginia, originally, which for any American listening, they probably will recognize that from their history lessons, because that's where the
Yeah.
U.S. won the surrender at Yorktown in the Revolutionary War. Like that's where
Ooh,
we won
yeah.
independence or whatever.
Yeah, that's where the good
Um,
old boys are. Did you have to
yeah.
get like voice? Did you ever take like speech lessons to get rid of your accent? Did you ever have a Southern accent or like a Virginian accent?
So my dad is Midwestern. My dad's from Michigan originally, and I was raised by my dad. So I feel like I kind of almost like switch back and forth a little bit. Like if I'm on the phone with my Southern grandma for like more than 3 minutes, I'm going to start sounding a little bit more Southern.
Yeah,
But I grew up with a Midwestern parent, even in Virginia. So I didn't like
yeah,
necessarily have this like thick Southern accent or
yeah.
anything.
You
I
want to
can
know
come out
another?
in certain words.
You want to know another interesting thing about the dynamic going on right here? If I could just be a little autistic as well and continue to point out like weird dynamics here, is you say you were raised by your father.
Yeah.
I was raised by my mom, which is
Yeah.
just but two moms. So I had
Oh,
no
nice.
male influence in my upbringing, and you had
Yeah.
no female influence in your upbringing.
Uh, I don't think it's fair to say I had no female influence, just
Oh,
because
okay.
I lived next door to my maternal grandparents. So my grandma was very present in my life. And I still had, like, my mom was in our life, just not as frequently. We visited with her like every other weekend, is probably, fair to say, up
Oh
until we
yeah,
reached a certain age and could kind of make our own choices.
yeah.
And
No,
then
you're right.
also,
You're
I'm
right. So you're
super
boring.
close to my aunts.
Yeah, I shouldn't
Yeah.
have given
Yeah.
you credit for that. You're boring. You're right.
Yeah.
You're
I
just like
definitely
everybody
still
else.
had,
We could end
yeah.
the podcast actually now. Yeah.
Okay,
No.
great. Yeah, that's perfect. I'm a little hungry, so that's good.
Oh, so you grew up in Virginia.
Yes.
So and then how old were you when you moved to Detroit?
So I moved to Michigan when I was 18 to go to school here, but I grew up coming to Michigan constantly because I have aunts, uncles, cousins here. So I grew up coming here every single summer, every other Christmas. I was in Michigan, and then, but yeah, moved here at 18. Lived in the Port Huron area for a couple of years, then went to Ann Arbor for school, then back to the Port Huron area, which is where my,
Yeah.
my kind of extended family is at,
Okay,
and then
cool.
moved to Detroit in January 1st, 2019.
Yeah.
So
Geez, so you're
yeah,
like in the belly of the beast, I feel like, in more ways than one. So like what I was gonna say earlier, like back to the echo chamber thing, was
yeah,
I was just saying that like we kind of come from two different echo chambers. Like, I know you like Tig Notaro and you like Mike Birbiglia, more kind of on the left comedians, and I'm watching who I'm watching on my side, or whatever. And then and you live in like Detroit, which is you would think that that would have because like I bet you if I was to ask you a question like would you want to live in a neighborhood that has lots of black people, what would you say?
I would say I live in a neighborhood that has lots of black
Exactly.
people.
So would I. But so yeah, so like I want to say though, even just today, like that, for coming on my show or for whatever, I think what you admire about Tig, I think you are expressing yourself, which is very admirable, which is I think it's very brave, to come on the show here today. So you know, I don't know. That's a compliment that I thought of for you. So
Oh,
there you go.
thanks. I don't think, I mean, no one's holding a gun to my head to podcast. So I don't feel particularly brave right now,
Yeah. So what other podcasts? Oh, geez. So what other podcasts do you watch?
I mean, I'm such a comedy nerd that so many of my podcasts are just like that I like to listen to, or like inside baseball comedy stuff where people are talking about process. It's funny because like I don't even think of like Mike Birbiglia or Tig Notaro as like particularly liberal comedians, because they're not doing like political comedy to me at all. I just saw Mike Birbiglia in November, and it's like a long, beautiful show about dealing with his father's mortality. I'm like, there's no right or left in that. That's just human,
Yeah. Well,
And
just
then,
to tag on what you
yeah,
were saying there, like,
yeah, go ahead.
that's the thing for me because I don't necessarily try to monetize it in the way of stand up. Like, but when you say that you talk about it like, oh, it's inside baseball, when you see
Yeah.
comedians talk about their processes and things like that, I really do see it just as almost like acting, where we're all kind of trying to get better at talking and stuff like that, and how we're going to present our personalities and whatever's going on in our brains. So at the end of the day, the inside baseball part of that, I believe to just be like what a person should be looking for if they're looking to train their personality to be like a kind of a better person or a more interesting
Mm,
person or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, I think you're
yeah.
pigeonholing yourself a little bit.
I'm more just mean I like listening to podcasts that are about the process of making comedy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But I
that's
mean, I
enough. I
see
like,
like that's what I'm trying to
yeah.
say though, that I see like life as that, you know?
Oh,
I
I
really
yeah,
do. Because every
yeah,
time we interact with people, we want them, theoretically, we want them to like us, you know? And that is
yeah.
fundamentally what comedy is, you know? So,
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, comedy is literally just uh uh trying to not even necessarily like win people to your perspective, but win people to the idea that you are a person with that perspective. I have like a real rule in kind of like my if I'm going to do some more like political stuff or topical things, which a lot of times is like political, my goal is always that like if I talk through the joke with my dad, who could not be more opposite than me politically, like he's, Trump supporter, all that sort of stuff, but like if I'm going to talk through the joke with him, I want it to make him laugh too, and for him to find it funny even though we're so far apart, because you know i just I just find that to be probably, to me, like comedy can be bridge building and
yeah.
can be
Well,
like
that's,
winning
yeah.
people to your perspective and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just can be. I think it ought to be, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and that is what I will say to that too about your comedy from what I've seen so far, is it does feel very neutral, which is good.
Yeah.
So both sides can like it, you know?
Yeah. I will still like take, I'll take my shots occasionally. Like one of my jokes that I love that I'm doing right now is, how it's really important if you're a leftist or more liberal to remember that the only real war is class war. And, like it or not, the average Trump supporter is probably your comrade in the class war. And it's just really important to remember that because that's what makes us better than them. And so I love playing into that. If I'm going to make a joke at the expense of Trump supporters in that way, I'm also going to play into that stereotype of liberals think they're so much better than everyone else.
Yeah.
They think their shit doesn't stink. And so, but at the end of the day, I really do, when it comes to like a deep philosophical, like who I am in my heart, like I see all of us, like so many of us as victims of kind of like, especially here in America, and it's true in a lot of places. Definitely, there are places in the developing world where this is even more so the truth. But I essentially just see us all like victims of an oligarchy, essentially made up of people who have a hoarding disorder that drives them to acquire wealth at a level that just doesn't make sense. Like we need to start investigating this. And that show Hoarders, where they like go in and they clear out the piss filled bottles from people's houses. Like we need to do that with billionaires with the money. Like, I'm sorry, Jeff, you don't need this much. You really don't. I promise you, you're going to be okay without it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they just need a hug.
We'll
We need to
still
send
like we'll
someone.
still see you as special, Jeff, if you
Yeah,
don't
I
have
promise.
to
We'll
like
give
a
you
trillion dollars. Yeah, like
what, name a city. We'll give you the key to it, buddy. You
yeah.
can have anyone you want. Like you did it. You won.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that his ex-wife has become the most philanthropic person I think on planet Earth, because she just has been, like, she obviously made out pretty well when they split because she had done a lot to support Amazon, and
Yeah.
she's just given that shit away as fast as she can, and I admire her so much for that, because I can't imagine having that much money and not instantly wanting to do whatever I could to solve the suffering of the world. And that's what makes women better than men. But yeah.
For sure. Yeah, maybe a lot of men for sure. But I feel the same way. Like after I had about the hoarding stuff, after I had a certain amount of money in my life, I kind of stopped. I used to think when I was younger that I was going to care about money a lot. And
Oh
then I
yeah.
got older And I was like, okay, maybe I don't actually care about money that much. Although I don't care that much about helping others either. At least certain people I don't. But I definitely do not have that hoarding mentality, which I
Yeah.
can see what you mean. I've seen it in
It's
people.
just very strange. It's very strange to me, the idea of how big of a yacht, how many yachts do you want?
Yeah.
Like
Or why do you
what?
want a yacht? Like
Yeah, it
what?
makes me, it truly, if I'm being honest, it makes me a little sad. Like there's something going on there that clearly hurts deep down. And there's just no ethical consumption under capitalism. So when you see someone with that much wealth, you know it is one on the exploitation of people in the developing world and everything like that. Like there's
Well,
no way you can acquire
okay,
that much wealth ethically.
maybe. Ethics
Yeah.
is very complicated, as you know, because you're a psychologist. Let me just
Yeah.
give you a little bit of pushback there.
Go ahead.
So, individualism. Okay, so it's great to be concerned about everybody, to think of everybody as a whole. All of that type of stuff, I think, is good. It's a good instinct. But there is, especially with America, there is a lot of individualism, especially in the West, like all of the West, not
Yes.
just America, where we
Yes.
get to enjoy this life where we all are kind of very free. We get to spend money on what we want. We get to be who we want to be, say what we want to say. So, at the expense of losing that, so because me, like I have so much freedom myself, and I get to live my life, and Jeff Bezos, just let me go for a second here. You talk
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
his exploitation, and then, but even in my life, I've accumulated wealth through certain forms of exploitation of others. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, there is a
What?
natural
Give me an example of that because how have you
renting.
acquired?
So, owning assets and then renting them to
Okay.
people of lesser economic status than you is a form of exploitation.
Yeah, some people would say that it's just landlords are just extracting wealth from the working class. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so you think about that. You think about so what I'm asking you now would be at the expense of losing that individualism, where the reality is you don't have to care. Like you can just find your own way. Like you can sell jewelry. You can be a singer. You can do whatever you want to get the amount of money that you need, which isn't that much. Like, because
Yeah.
again, what I'm defending, the opposite voice, just to clarify, what I'm coming at here is I'm in a sense defending capitalism or democracy or freedom or whatever. So, at the expense of losing that, just so that we can intrude on Jeff Bezos's, ridiculous success, is that something that we want? Okay, and just
Yeah.
before you answer, I'm just gonna. My cat is going through heat
I
right now,
hear
and I'm
it.
sorry. So I figured you could just hear her now. So just one moment,
Yeah,
okay?
I can.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
a bugger. Just a sec. Here, I'll show
Uh
you her,
huh.
and then we can get into this ridiculous question that we're unqualified to answer or ask.
I feel pretty qualified.
Okay, good. Hey, what are you doing? Come here. Here. Let's show her that you're cute, so she doesn't get mad, and then I'm putting you somewhere else in the house.
Okay, great.
This is
Oh,
Jibble. This is a Sphinx
it's
cat. They look kind
yeah.
of crazy.
I
But
heard they can get sunburned, so I feel really related to them.
oh yeah, but I would never let
Yeah,
her outside. She's
good.
she's too
I heard they
valuable.
just like lay in the window until they have tan lines and they have little
Yeah,
wrinkles, and I'm like, that's pretty funny.
yeah, maybe that too. Yeah. All right, one sec.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry about that. I had to bring her as far away in the house as I could get her because
Yeah, no
there's no way
worries.
to quiet them down. You just kind of got to put them as far away as possible when
Just
they're in the heat stage. Sorry, but yeah, I'll edit that
you
whole
can,
delay out. I hope that was
yeah,
a good little voice break.
you can just let them get laid. No, I'm just kidding.
No doubt.
So, so here's one thing I'll say, just to hopefully hit your points in order. When people bring up things like, "Oh, we're so free in the West," and some of that comes at a cost. I'm always curious to know how much that person has traveled because I've done a fair amount of travel, and I wouldn't say that living in America, land of the free, home of the brave, or whatever. I wouldn't say that I necessarily have felt less free in other places that I've traveled to. Lots of countries enjoy freedom of speech. Lots of even in like just all throughout the world, these things are not owned or monopolized by the West. Another thing I'll say is I don't think you're a person who's making their money by exploiting the working class. Now, if you were to tell me right now, I actually own one of those huge hedge funds that owns 5,000 rental properties and is driving up the costs in major metropolitan areas and is leaving things. If you were to tell me that's how you've made your money, I would be like, yeah, you are a leech on the working class, and the guillotine is made for you. But an individual who owns a couple homes, who's renting them out to tenants, and assuming you're being a good landlord, you're keeping those properties in good condition, you're communicating with your tenants in a way that's respectful, you're being a good landlord. I see individual landlords as more something that provides service to a certain extent, because
Yeah.
truthfully, not everyone wants to be a homeowner.
Cool.
There
I
are
like to see
going
it
to
as
be
that
people.
as well. I like to see
Yeah,
it as that as
exactly.
well, that I'm helping out
Yeah.
that. And what I will say is, I hope it didn't just fall out of my head. Here's the weed
No,
thing
go
for
ahead.
you. It's just tough though, because in terms of the that's because we're not talking in absolutes here. We can't, or we're just missing the point. So if we're talking in ratios, at the end of the day, and this becomes the discussion we're having about democracy too. Oh, we're back.
Sorry, hold on.
Yeah, I just lost you for
Hold
a
on.
second there.
Am I back? Someone
Yep.
was trying to call me. I probably would have been smart to put my phone on D&D, but
Yeah.
whatever.
No worries. No worries. Um. What was I saying?
I remember the word absolutes.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, because I believe, just like Jeff Bezos believes, if he believes he's being ethical, you know, uh, I believe that I am doing everything that you just listed in my business practices. You know what I'm saying? But over, let's say we're kind of pretending we're speaking
Are
hypothetically.
you really quickly? I just want to be clear. Are you trying to make an equivalency between yourself and Jeff Bezos? Because that just might be like a bridge too far for me. Because when I talk about like him exploiting a working class, I mean like literally like factory workers in the developing world, who are like being exposed to toxic chemicals every day that will cut their lives short. I'm talking about I don't think I can't like
Have you been to South
it's too
America?
non it's too nonsense of a comparison for me to be like, yeah, landlord
Well,
in Canada
but
is
yeah,
so
but it's a
similar.
simple. It's meant to be a simple comparison to model a principle that we're talking about. So, like, my
What's
question
the
to you would be:
principle?
have you been to South America?
Have I been to South America? I've been to Mexico a bunch. I've been to
Mexico.
Costa Rica.
Okay.
Been to places like that. Yeah.
Like, I've been to Guatemala. I've been to a few other places in South America. You talk about the factories as if they're more dangerous than everyday life for these people, but like they burn toxic things in the streets in Guatemala. There's children walking around on the streets crying. Nobody cares. There's grandmas carrying logs up hills because that's what they've done for their little farmstead, so on and so forth for their whole life.
Yeah, I think you're right to notice that like because many of these aren't countries that were left on their own to thrive and develop as they would. These were
Also, it's
countries
our
that
fault.
are we I actually don't know what kind of podcast this is. Is this like a highly political podcast where you're gonna want to like get in a back and forth where we're almost like debating about things?
Um, are you uncomfortable?
I'm not uncomfortable. It's just not something that like I'm a stand-up comedian. I thought we were going to get up here to like talk about comedy. I thought this was a comedy podcast, to be honest. I'm not like uh I'm not interested in debating like deeply held beliefs, and I also don't feel I don't feel like I want to sit here on a podcast and break down like the long held, multifaceted, very complex consequences of what happens in developing nations when they've dealt with the consequences of wealth extraction through colonialism. What happens to them when things like my own government comes in there and topples leaders that they've rightfully elected, because that's something that America participates in all the time. We like go in there. We in South America, we hold up these military coups. We interfere all the time. Like, I don't. I just don't. It's not. I'm not a news commentator. Like, I'm a stand-up comedian from Detroit. This isn't like my vibe.
Okay. All right. I mean,
Maybe I should have watched some more. I didn't. Truthfully, I didn't even watch an episode of this podcast beforehand. I just assumed, since you found me through stand-up comedy, that it was related to that. If I'd known this was like a politics podcast, I would have been like, oh, I'm literally a court jester. It's not my job to be like, I'm like, I can't remember which comedian. I think it's Bill Burr, where he was like talking about these big issues. He's like, why are we asking comedians to speak on these things? Like, hey, let's see what the clowns think. Like,
yeah, well,
you
I
know.
thought when he said that, that was pretty disingenuous because he has been doing commentary like that for a very long time.
Yes, but there's a real big difference between doing material that you've worked and workshopped and everything like that, and then being asked in the spur of the moment to like speak to a
Hey, I
really
agree that
complex,
it's different.
big
I
thing.
agree that
Yeah,
it's different.
yeah.
I would say
So
that
I
that is
don't know
definitely
that
the
it's
difference between
disingenuous.
what we're doing here versus stand up, for
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
again, I wouldn't agree about minimizing what a comedian is. You know,
yeah. I just more mean like there's a place and a time for a comedian to be that. It's on stage with a microphone. I'm not interested in being like a hot take on a podcast comedian. It's just like, not, if I'm gonna have something worthy to say in regards to this stuff, I'm gonna find a way to make it material and
yeah.
make
So
it,
when you say the things that you say, you feel that a real time challenging or discussion about those things is not productive.
uh it's just productive isn't, well, first of all, I'm a leftist. I don't live my life to be productive. I don't think around terms of like productivity, everything like that.
Okay.
I don't exist to be productive or anything like that. Like, I exist to be a unique expression of the universe having like a human experience, and this just isn't a part of that human experience that appeals to me. And I'm lucky enough that I have a life where I just like get to be like, oh, I actually don't want to do that, and I'm not gonna.
Okay.
So yeah. So I like, if you want to talk about comedy, the
Yeah, I may
philosophy of
I believe
that.
we are. When I talk
Yeah,
about anything, I feel I can find comedy in it because I
I
don't.
just don't, I don't love those, you know basically, like, you just painted a picture of Guatemala as if it's this like, third world hellhole, and they should be grateful to have, these like factory jobs that are exposing them, like I said, to like
Yeah.
toxic
Well,
chemicals and
it
stuff
would be
like
an
that,
opposing
without
view towards yours about what you
not
presented because somebody might
uh
find there might be people who've made their lives on those factory jobs with Amazon who would disagree with you, like a large portion of them.
there's no disagreeing with things, facts, like, oh, some of these, I'm not saying every single one, but there's no disagreeing with the facts, like, many of these manufacturing processes are harmful to human beings. There's not a second side of a fact. That's why it's sometimes kind of hard to talk with people on the right, because they'll be like, well, you just need an opposing view to the idea that cancer causing things cause cancer. And it's just like, no, cancer causing things cause cancer. And sometimes the people who are making stuff for you that you're buying for $6.99 on Amazon are being exposed to those things. And you've just
Yeah.
got to either accept that you're okay with that, or,
Don't
like,
you think though
hope
that like
that
a
you can
lot of
dream of a
stuff
better
causes
world.
cancer? Like
Sure.
everything causes cancer.
I mean, the sun will do it if
Yeah.
you got the right complexion, but it's more
Yeah.
just one of those things of, you are not being asked. You are very privileged and lucky to live and to be able to make money in a way that is not asking you to make terrible sacrifices to your health, your well-being, your family, your time, everything like that. And not to mention being compensated basically next to nothing for it. Like, let's not forget, there's a good reason why lots of these people try to come to other places where there's more opportunities, because they're
Yeah.
not being compensated. And so, like,
Yeah. Because like
you're
in Guatemala, their dollar is worth 1/44th of what
Yeah,
our dollar is worth.
yeah.
So if they
I just
can,
got back from Bali and it made me think about everything I own with a label that says like made in Indonesia.
yeah,
And, but at the same time, like I would argue that many of those places where I've been to, there is a wealth there that we wouldn't understand in the West
for
because
sure.
there's a more communal mindset amongst, I think individualism isn't the way the human nervous system is meant to live. And
Yeah,
so, like, this idea that we hold up individualism as if our nervous systems were not crafted for co regulation is just kind of silly and counterintuitive to the organism that we are.
fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think that we are hitting the core of this. And again, we can cut out. This is all up to your control. Again, I'll just remind you because I want you to be comfortable. Let me just say a few things here.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you have control over all this. Any part of it you don't like does not exist. Okay,
Yeah.
so remember that, and remember that we're talking, and yes, we are looking for laughs. Remember that we are different, and you know. Yeah, I don't want you to be uncomfortable with any of the discussions, because that's not what I'm trying to do.
It's not that I'm uncomfortable. Like I'm actually pretty I think probably the way I've been speaking to these things show that they're not casually held. They're firmly and deeply held beliefs. It's not that I'm uncomfortable. It's that I'm, like I said, this isn't
Okay,
something that interests
well,
it
fair
doesn't
enough. Fair enough. Well,
it
then let me just say my part here is, I would
yeah.
say that, and this is fundamental for what I believe you could see for leftists, if you want me to call you that, but it's ultimately a liberal principle, which is, fighting against what you could call the natural order of things, which would include hierarchies, which would include all of those types of things that would produce the things that Europe were expressing as being unethical or things that we should fix or not facilitate, whether they be certain ways that factories are run or things like that, or right down to the value of currencies. You know, uh, that is what we're discussing here. That's definitely the core of this. And then what I'll say is like, we're having trouble finding humor here now because I feel as though the energy has shifted a little bit. But
Yeah.
I do feel that, and if I could just challenge you with this, it's like these ideas and these beliefs that you say that you have that are strongly held, and this type of thing. That's all good. It's good to be passionate about ideas. It's good to have strongly held ideas. But I think that it would be considered a beneficial thing to challenge ideas, to hear other sides, to be able to be moved in certain directions based on what you hear and learn. You know,
When I hear compelling arguments, I'm
well,
definitely
for sure, I'm
moved and
here for
open to
it.
them.
I'm here for it. But you
But
interrupted me
things
with a
like,
little bit of ad hominem, don't you think?
what was your ad hominem? I'm
Well,
open to the
well, we
idea
were
that
we were
I
discussing things, and I started to bring it. You said your things about. You said a very kind of a simple point about you know the negatives of capitalism and the industrial system and things
yeah.
like that. And then I came back to you and made a basic comment about, because you even referenced the traveling thing and being cultured and knowing other cultures and this type of stuff. And that's why I thought it would be a good point to bring back, where I would say, hey, like, Guatemala is pretty rough. You know what I'm saying? Like, whether
So I guess
you're
those
kind of getting caught
factories
up
aren't
in
doing much to make
talking
it
about
better.
first world problems versus. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Just a second.
I
Uh,
said if it's pretty rough, I guess those factories aren't making it much better.
I mean, they're producing stuff that we all use. I mean,
Making it
how else
better
is
for us.
things going to
Yeah.
get made? Don't you think?
What's
Like,
that? Oh, I think we could be consuming far less than we actually are. So
for sure.
I would argue. I mean, if you ask me what I want a fundamental disruption of everything about modern society that causes human beings to have to return back to
Yeah,
uh, small communities based on kinship structures of
yeah,
roughly 300 to 400 people where they're living
yeah,
communally and
yeah. That would
like
be great. You're
everything
saying a
on
lot of
modern
things
times
that
is
are very
silly to
similar
me.
to a rapper that I interviewed, I believe in like episode 102 or something. I might not have
Uh,
that number right, but his name was Jake. He's very, very famous. He has 100,000 YouTube subscribers, 300,000 Instagram subscribers. And he was saying a lot of the same things as you, to do with that we need to dismantle everything, and even down to my own close friends in, from engineering school or whatever. We all discuss this type of stuff frequently. I believe any academics should, you know. And the thing is, so back to like the other side of
yeah,
it.
really quickly though, what was the ad hominem? Because you said that
Well,
I
I thought you were coming. You kind of came at me in my podcast, going like, "What is this? What are you doing? What are you
oh
like?" And
oh okay, I
that's a
got
bit
to find that.
of a slate against me, with the assumption that I'm here to do something bad, or I'm
Oh,
not here looking.
I didn't think that at all. I was just like, oh, I don't actually. It was just me genuinely being like, oh, I'm realizing I don't actually know what this podcast is
Hey,
about. I
how
thought
many
this was a
times? I mean, how
comedy.
many episodes of a podcast have? Yeah, how many episodes of a podcast have you ever done?
Uh, quite when it comes to the wedding photography world, quite a few. Just because as an educator in that world, you
But
get asked on them.
but
But
maybe like a first with something like this. You know what I'm saying? And like at the end of the day, the point of a podcast is it's not 15 minutes of material. It's a long form. And by the way, I can cut all this. I'll be cutting this stuff up to make, again, just to remind you.
yeah,
But it's like these are long form podcasts. We are getting to know you. We're getting to know me, and every single time. And like what? Let's say Joe Rogan is obviously the architect of all this, but the reality is when you talk to somebody for 20 minutes versus 1 hour versus 2 hours, it vastly shifts, and you get to see a lot of honesty. And that's what I, at my core, like most about this form of discourse. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
at the end of the
To
day,
me, the best way to get to, and this could just be like a difference in community, like uh, uh, communication styles, the best way to get like at honesty and common ground isn't the pushback, isn't the debate, isn't the but what about this ism. It's more just like uh uh having a conversation that gets at why do you have these ideals, why do you feel this way, what's in your background that causes you to have
yes,
these beliefs.
yes,
um
but that's
and
but
i
that's
and
only
I just
making it
want to
one
say
sided. Because
really
like
quickly.
I can ask you why, like we can ask you about you, and we can hear your opinions for a certain amount of time, which I believe we did for the first 15-20, and then they get you discuss them. Don't you agree with that?
I don't think you haven't asked me once why I'm, uh, like what informed these worldviews or anything like that. Like what in my background
Yes. Okay.
informed
Well,
that.
let's jump right to that, because my next point was going to be like the dismantling of the whole system. So,
Yeah,
what exactly makes you believe? Because as you said yourself, these are extremely complicated stuff. It's fun to talk about them, but at the end of the day, we do both fundamentally know we're not necessarily qualified to talk about them. But that's kind of what's funny about it.
yeah,
That's kind of one of the best aspects of being a comedian, is that we're supposed to represent the median, and that's meaning the average person, and so on and so forth. So that's why us actually talking about it is the best possible thing. So in terms of the the dismantling of the whole system, why do you feel it needs to be dismantled? And then do you think it's possible? Because it would be quite hard to
yeah,
do.
yeah. Uh, I want to say a couple of things really quick just to touch back on one. You don't have to edit anything out. Like I'm comfortable and I stand by everything I said, and even like the awkward moments are fine by me. I don't
Fuck
care.
yeah.
It's
Awesome.
probably.
I love
I mean,
that.
maybe edit out the weird part where I'm like waiting for you to put your cat away and I'm
Yeah.
staring into the distance.
Yeah.
But I don't really like. I
I'm
like
so happy to hear that. Thank you for
yeah,
saying that.
it doesn't matter to me.
That's the
I'm
bravery. There you go. All right.
confident in the way I
Good.
present myself.
Cool.
I'm honestly more confident in the way I present myself than I would be in the way someone would present me after editing, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'll show
yeah,
it to you before
um,
this goes anywhere. So,
yeah. And I want to say, I am always open to compelling arguments that are opposite or like that are in contrary to something that I view. And this is where I'm going to tease you a little bit, and the shit talker and comedian in me is going to come out. But doesn't lots of stuff cause cancer is not a compelling argument, dude. It's just kind of a dumb thing to say. And so like when there is like a really intelligent argument that makes me see things, like I've changed my opinion on guns, you know, like there's certain things like that where it's just like I'm not a person with completely unmovable opinions. I like to think of
All
myself
right.
as
Well, let me just quickly
open
say
to,
this.
yeah, go ahead.
Contrary to what you might believe, I do have a lot of compelling arguments. And let me
I'm
tell
sure
you
you do.
this.
I'm just teasing you. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. But let me tell you this. I feel, and again, this is more for you to respond to. We don't need to stop any
Yeah.
discussions with being upset or whatever. Let's just discuss. I don't believe that an argument of, a lot of things cause cancer is bad. What I think that is that would be an elitist critique of how I'm saying it. It's you cannot argue with that everything causes cancer, and where you're located. I just think that that's not proper.
I mean, not everything causes cancer. You know, a nice organic watermelon probably isn't going to give you cancer. Probably a
Sugar
nice
sugar causes cancer.
conventionally farmed doesn't cause is like a really weird thing, which this is getting into health, which neither of us have a medical background from what I know. But it's not fair to be like X to, because lots of people eat sugar their entire life and never have cancer. So it's just like saying when ice cream sales go up, people are more likely to drown. Ice cream causes drowning. It's like, no, people eat ice cream in the summertime and they also swim in the summertime. So people drown in the summertime. Like
Yeah. But
correlation.
99% of people that work in factories benefit from it. They don't die of cancer
Wait, 99% of people that work in factories benefit from it.
and don't die of
Okay.
cancer.
I can pull out a weird random number too and say 99% of people who like to paint their nails terracotta are bad bitches. But it's like, there's no, I know that you're not going to like pull out a random study that shows 99% of these people, because like we can't
It's
even
just
say
common
that for
sense.
like, yeah, it's like, if you're just judging benefit by receiving a wage, then yes, the people who work there, but also wage theft is the most prevalent kind of theft across the world. So even to say receiving a wage, like not all of these people are receiving the wages that were promised to them. You know, go ahead and do some research on wage theft if you want to feel absolutely and completely angry.
Mm,
But it's just like, it's like that's the trouble, is like some things sound good and like common sense, but just like when you zoom out and you view like the bigger web of what's actually happening when it comes to, unfortunately, like the exploitation and extraction of labor from people, it's,
yeah,
there's not as much common sense, so
for
yeah.
sure. That's where the economy is so tough, because it's like, let's say you approach things maybe like how you do from like a kind of a purely ethical standpoint. It's tough to ever
I
put
To
any.
be clear, I don't even think of it as ethical. This is like spiritual to me. Like I'm a non-dualist, and so I don't see a separation between myself and the grandmother carrying logs in Guatemala that you mentioned earlier. Like, it's so it's even to call it ethical isn't like quite the that my ethics in, aren't what inform my worldview. My spirituality informs my worldview, and then my worldview informs
Yes,
my ethics,
for
if that
sure,
makes
and I can
sense.
see
Yeah.
that. But at the end of the day, you can't deny that that is, in a sense, illogical. Because in the side that there's a that is great, and saying that we're all connected, is that's all beautiful spiritual stuff. But in terms of the functionality of the societies in the world, it's tough to make that equation equal.
Yeah, I'm just not a person that puts logic on the highest pedestal it can possibly be put in. I'm not a materialist. I'm not
Yeah,
a
me
person
either.
who thinks logic is always and also logic is constantly shifting, constantly informed by our current understanding of how the world works. It's informed by culture, it's informed by all these things. So to catapult, logic as this idea that you can label something with the word logical, and now we have to see it as some sort of universal truth, just isn't true. Because there was a point in time when it was, to point to my own country, which I like to do, there was a point in time where it was completely logical to enslave massive numbers of African slaves here in America. You can make every logical argument for why that system needed to continue, every logical, and it was logical according to the time of that day. And I just wonder, when we fast forward, now we're roughly, not even 200 years since the end of, slavery, and when it ended, it didn't really end, but that's a whole nother story. But whatever, we're quite separated from that. So it just makes me question, 200 years from now, what are the things that you and I would go, yeah, that's completely logical, that our
Yeah.
progeny, whatever, would be like, what the fuck were they thinking? That was
Yeah.
obviously not the right way to, because like, I think, to look back on, like chattel slavery and stuff like that, I can't currently, as a person informed by, being raised in the society I was formed in, I can't currently identify with the logical argument for it at the time. So
For sure.
anyways,
Yeah. Well, let me try to put forward those arguments for you.
yeah,
So we can agree, like what you were saying, questioning what our progeny is going to look for. I think we can agree on a couple things. Let's agree on those things now. So, like, we both would agree that the end goal of any movement, of anything going on in different groups of people, we want to limit suffering.
yes,
We want to limit death. Those are the two. I would say those are the two biggest ones, right? Suffering, death. We want to limit those.
yeah,
And then there's definitely arguments on both sides, from the the spiritual side versus the logical side, for us to come to these places of ensuring that the least amount of people suffer and the least amount of people die. You know, and there's certain times when either side is the best way to approach it. And when it comes to, like, let's say, limiting that suffering, you would say that we need to dismantle everything and restart.
I mean, that's my best idea.
And yeah,
I'm
and
not going to act like I'm smart enough to really be able to solve it. But
yeah,
it's like, because I don't just think about human suffering, right? I think about the suffering of the earth, our home. I think about the suffering of different species and stuff like that. I think it's, even when I think about, since like some of this is like spiritually informed, I think about things like, I live here in Detroit. We have a massive Middle Eastern and Muslim population in our neighbors in Dearborn, and we love them. And something that is readily available all around here is halal meat. And like an important part, which is the only kind of, if you're unaware, Muslims eat halal. It's very similar to eating kosher. In fact, if you're kosher, you can eat halal meat. They allow that too. But an important part of slaughtering in the halal process is like limiting the suffering as much as possible. The animals aren't allowed to see any other animal die. They're prayed over, everything like that. And so, even from that spiritual standpoint, like limiting suffering, even in the times where we accept that we are going to allow for a death because this lamb is going to feed our family for the next whatever, we still I probably, if we went back and watched the tape when you said limit death, my brain might have, like, my face might have gone like, because it's just like some of it. So I would say it's best to limit suffering and accept death as a natural part of
yeah,
the order. And of course,
yeah.
if
So
we
there's
can
certain parts of the
prolong
natural order
life,
that you
and
accept.
yeah.
So
Oh
there's
yeah, of course. I don't think everyone's gonna like live forever and be happy all the time, or or anything like that.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the case. I
yeah.
just think
It's
that
just it's
there are
so
things.
it's just so tough to ever set up something as, at its core, unethical as the economy, or currency, right? Like where people have different amounts of money because they do this
Yeah.
or that. It's so hard to ever align that perfectly with either side. It's
Yeah.
really it's really tricky. And
I
yeah,
know.
well,
I'm like, I wish we just, I mean, the best I can see in terms of like a model that I think would be a beautiful thing for humanity and a beautiful thing for nature and a beautiful thing for just life. And I mean like the big capital L life, all life forms, everything like that. The best models I see tend to be more and given like everyone's indigenous to somewhere, but I see in a lot of indigenous cultures, especially like here in America with our Native American culture, when they were allowed to live as they wanted to live, they lived very much in harmony with even like things like their permaculture practices and stuff
okay,
like that, were all these things that were just like
yeah,
so fruitful and
yeah,
abundant and made sure everyone could eat and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So yeah,
Okay, cool. And we're gonna jump back to comedy
but I'd like
questions
air
right away here because I'm
conditioning.
so curious about what got you into stand up and all those types
Oh
of
yeah,
things.
sure.
But my last quick question on that area for you would be so just like because I've heard those types of things before as well, and the rose colored glasses comes to mind, like the idea of that. Do you think that there's a chance that your views of how these Native American cultures functioned might be a little bit idealistic, a little bit
I
utopian?
mean,
Where like, what
there
about
were
the rape
still,
and what about all like them kind of
yeah,
killing each other and all
I
that
was
stuff
gonna
and not
say,
having a legal system?
yeah, there were still feuding tribes. There were still
Yeah, but there's not
what
still
you
though.
call it.
That would continue to exist. That was an aspect of their culture, was the way the population stayed low is because they were always killing each other.
I'm going to need a source on that. I mean, I think
Yeah,
also
just
large
all of the different wars
industrialization.
throughout Canada. Like we have a lot of Native Americans. What's cool is we were nicer to Native Americans actually than you guys, but
Well,
uh,
the residential schools weren't the best thing you could have done to them, but neither of
neither
our
was
countries
killing them
deserves a
all
gold.
like what
Yeah, I
you
was gonna
guys
say
did.
neither of our countries deserves a gold star for how it treated its
Ours does.
indigenous people when they
Ours
got
does.
here.
We kept the kids alive. You guys didn't. That's what the schools were used for.
I think they found some residential schools with some mass graves that
No, it's
included
all been
children in them.
disproven. It's all been
Okay, that's
disproven.
good to know. That's heartening to hear.
Yeah, thankfully. But
But
that's because the churches were the cemeteries, so there's lots of bones there. But
yeah,
they disproved the
yeah,
whole children stuff. But at the
that's
end of the
crazy.
day, there's no argument there.
but
Neither
but yes,
country was
there would
great.
still be I don't even think I'm not one of those people that thinks of a utopia without suffering, because I think like that's like the fundamental argument of people who like maybe don't believe in God or something like that. They'll say like, how could there be a God if there is suffering?
Yeah, for sure. But that's what it feels
I
like. It's coming off a little bit that way. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's good that you're asking more questions to explore my beliefs more deeply so that I can clarify them.
Well, for sure.
I don't
Let's keep
I
doing
don't
that.
think that the
Because my
world is.
question right now is because this is just, I mean, it's just a like a obvious one, and please explain how you could believe that Native American culture is better than modern culture.
I didn't. I'm more. It's less extracting of resources on our planet, and if we lose this planet, we lose everything. So the way
Okay. Like a
indigenous
super
cultures.
long term view, then kind of thing, like a
Yes.
conservation.
Yes. And also it's just like so I'm not saying it's I'm not I don't so I'm autistic, and something that's good to know about autistic minds is they are not
I'm
nearly as
OCD, so this is a battle of the titans here.
great. Autistic minds are not nearly as
Great.
hierarchical as the neurotypical mind. So you're talking about hierarchies a lot, and I don't have this, I don't put the same value. I don't even like when people say, "What's your favorite restaurant?" Because I'm just like, I don't know. What day of the week is it? What part of my menstrual cycle am I in? Like, you can't ask me what my favorite restaurant is. And so it's just like, even saying one is better than the other, or this, that, or the other. It's just like, what we are currently doing is not working. And I'm not arguing for a return to the way Native Americans uh, did things. I'm saying there is some inherent wisdom to the way they were living with the land, and to be like, well, they also raped and pillaged, so let's just throw the baby out with the bathwater is kind of silly, because there's just a lot we could learn from how they permacultured, how they cultivated, how they
Yeah.
did restorative and generative agriculture with the like buffalo, like all of those things help our planet, help us thrive. So to be like, oh well, they did this, so we got to discount all this wisdom that they had,
Yeah.
is just silly, because think of the modern wisdom that we have that people could easily discount, because women are still getting raped and murdered. Like femicide is still a huge thing.
Okay.
So it's like, like it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I agree
So
with all that. Do you
yeah,
think that there's a chance that the baby with the bathwater analogy could be that you use could be also applied to your views towards like modern systems? Like, do you
I
believe that the
definitely,
modern agriculture system is our attempt to create sustainable, farming, and maybe the system of the economy is meant to ensure that, like, let's say for one of the modern tribal societies, like you talk about, you got certain lazy people who don't do anything in their
yeah, I'm
societies,
one of
then
them.
that would be problems. Sorry, what did you say?
I was going to say I'm one of them. I live a
Okay.
life of so much leisure. Like, I am a professional artist. I've been a professional artist my entire career. I'm a wedding photographer.
Yeah,
I work very few hours for the amount I'm compensated.
for
And I
sure.
would argue that people who live a life of leisure are valuable to society. Oftentimes they wind up becoming artists and
Yeah,
poets and writers.
yeah,
And boy, wouldn't the world be boring without them. And
for sure.
sure, occasionally there's just going to be a lazy leech, but who cares? You're probably also shitty in some way too. So whatever, like, you're probably also a pull on society in some way, whether you believe it or not, even if it's just thinking you're entitled to a wider part of the sidewalk than someone else is.
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, I don't give a shit that there are lazy people. I'm one of them. I love it. It's awesome. I wish there could be more of us. Like,
yeah.
and so,
I feel the
like,
same way about myself.
yeah, I think like people who get to live a leisurely life also serve, first of all, they're incredibly privileged. I want to make that clear. I think I'm incredibly privileged that I get to live a life as an artist. Like, what? That's crazy. Like, that's something that I would have dreamed of when I was a little girl, and I get to do it. Like, that's so incredible. And I just refuse to believe that I don't have value to society because I'm not like out there busting ass 60 hours a week or whatever. Like, I'm
Did
still
somebody
bringing.
who told you that you are of no value to society?
Well, no, I was just saying, when you were like, oh, there's going to be like lazy people. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, but
awesome.
it's
Like,
not an absolute. It
yeah,
can be held
but
on a scale, and money and stuff
yeah.
was
And to be
invented to
clear,
try to be a continuous measure of making sure that those people who are the laziest and not even producing art like you and able to have enough money from it, there's people who are lazier than that, and those people need to be put in a certain place in the system to make sure that they're the least weight on it as possible. And to me, that seems like a productive thing, don't you? Like, so that would be my argument for, let's say, the economy or whatever, not getting
I think
completely
it's,
deconstructed or thrown out like the baby with the bathwater.
yeah. I mean, there are certain things about modern society that I would never want to get rid of. Like, we've
Like what?
made incredible medical advancements that obviously would not have been present 200 years ago. I would love it if we would put more research into
Compliment
more.
a group that isn't a female dominated. Compliment one aspect of the modern society that isn't a female dominated industry.
Wait, is the medical field female dominated? Good for us.
Yeah,
Okay, ladies. I didn't even know that we had turned the tide on that
yeah, they definitely are.
one.
Not in the doctors
So
area, but
basically,
in
you're like,
majority of.
tell me something good men do. Is that what you're saying?
No,
I
no,
love what gay men have done for fashion. There you go. That's not something female. No, you said compliment something that's not
something
female
that you like
dominated.
about modern society where the industry isn't female dominated.
Okay. I think it's great to drive on roads and exist in beautiful buildings. And I would
Construction.
say
That's
the
what I do.
majority,
I'm a structural
yeah,
engineer, so you're
yes,
complimenting me directly.
yeah. So there you go. Now let's hear you compliment something that predominantly women attribute.
Education. I think
Oh,
the
that's a good one.
education system is really good. Um,
Really? Is it good in Canada? Oh, I'm
yeah.
jealous.
Oh, it's
the
not
way
good
we
there?
the way we okay, so this is to go back to like way back to like, what is my why do I feel the way I do, why am I, some would say, what radicalized you, even though I don't think that I'm a radical,
Yeah.
but
But hey,
whatever.
but critiquing the education system
Yeah,
is a Republican stance. So
well,
you're about to make
American,
Republican arguments.
except I'm gonna make an argument that the Republicans would hate if we got rid of this thing, and this is their primary thing. But
Okay,
anyways,
okay, yeah.
I was born in, so I'm went to high school in Yorktown, Virginia, but I was actually born in Hampton, Virginia. That's where I lived until I was 10 years old. It's a majority Black city, just like Detroit. I've lived in majority Black cities for, a good amount of my life. And especially for my young life, my elementary school years, I was there.
Yeah.
And then when I was 10 years old, my dad moved us to Yorktown, which I would describe Yorktown as like kind of your classic middle class suburb. We had some families that were like a lot more wealthy. We also had military families because that area of Virginia is, there's a lot of military bases and stuff. So military families also provided, some economic diversity in the other direction as well, because obviously the average military family is not making a lot of money in America. But for the most part, I would describe Yorktown as very middle class. And the way we fund our public schools in America, we fund them based on the property taxes of the area of that city. And so I moved from a relatively poor majority Black city to a relatively wealthy majority white suburb. And at 10 years old, I immediately realized there was something wrong, because what I was getting access to after we moved was so far above and beyond what my friends, who I loved, who I grew up with, who I'd known since kindergarten, what they had access to back at the elementary school I had just left, because I moved in the middle of my 5th grade year. So I literally just had like one half of 5th grade in a poor school district, the other half of 5th grade in a wealthy school district. And I can tell you, as a kid who moved from one to the other, children in the wealthier school district were not more deserving and were not more deserving of a better quality education. They just happen to live in a wealthier area. I think in Canada, it's a little bit more fair, where the money for public schools is more. Is it also done by property taxes?
No, it's still based on whoever pays the money. Like because whoever's paying the property taxes, they're going to have better infrastructure than the people who aren't. It's still like that here. We have a decent public school system, but even in my small city, we still have private schools that are much better than the other ones.
Detroit is like that too, where it's like a lot of Detroit public schools are really struggling, and a lot of we have what's called like school of choice in some school districts. So like a lot of Detroit kids wind up going to school in Dearborn because the what they get access to is better there. But that only works if you have a parent that can drive you out to Dearborn Public School. If you're reliant on public education or the school bus system here in Detroit, you're going to be, the school you're going to have access to is just not going to be as good as what you could get in the suburbs. And that's just one of those ways where, like, here in America, obviously our racial history in America is horrendous. And I'm going to qualify this by saying I'm a white lady talking about this. Technically on TikTok, there's been some discourse around are redheads white or not.
But I heard they're Black.
I'm like, oh, that's why I like the
Say the N-word for us.
No, thank you. And so, but I feel like, hold on, I just lost my train of thinking about how
we were talking about education. We should have known. We were talking about how you wanted to take away the one thing the Republicans love about it.
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say the one thing they love, but they like that system. Oh, the racial history, the abysmal racial history of America. That's what I was talking about.
Yep.
So like we had legal segregation in America for a long time. In the South, it was legally enforced that these schools were for white kids, these schools were for Black kids, and it's against the law to like mix them together, right? And then rightfully, some people were like, that ain't so good. We're going to have a civil rights movement. We have some reforms, all that sort of stuff. But there are still people who are very interested in upholding this system that keeps people separate. Mostly, to be fair, they're most interested in keeping people segregated by class, but race comes into it a lot. But having public schools funded by the property taxes of the district that they're in is just one of those ways we can continue that kind of, like, even though there's no legal segregation anymore, it creates this de facto segregation, because obviously we know education is so critical to moving yourself, to some sort of forward mobility. Given the number one indicator of how much money you will make as an adult is how much money your parents made. That's just that's a true statistic. So there's actually not a ton of economic mobility in terms of people moving between classes, at least in America. But yeah, that's just like one of those, that school system is just one of the ways that we just continue to kind of like have this de facto segregation that allows, you know, the upper classes, which are predominantly white in America, to continue to kind of live their life without having to worry about and interact with, you know, the
Exactly.
struggles of the working class. Yeah.
For sure. And then we've reached the end of the tunnel, haven't we? Because
Yeah.
we're at the end of the tunnel where you kind of reach that ultimate area of taboo, which is whether we're talking classism or whether we're talking racism, you reach this point where you're faced with, is it ethical or not? Is there an argument to be made that the classes are there for, that they became that way, or like, the countries, the development. So let's like, so for example, right, like if we could think of a simple model of it, you'd think of like, and by the way, we're going to get back to the script here in a second. If you could make like a simple model of it, so before cars and planes, you know what I mean, you had the most centralized of people of the same race that could exist. The people that emigrated out of Africa and went up to, you know Western Europe, and then there's the people that went up to the east, and there's people that went to the southern part of the east, and they all became different. And you made Asians, and you have all
Yeah.
these different races of people. And then for however many thousands of years, they developed in their areas and how they developed. And then you have what you see up in where we're from ultimately, which is the UK. You see what they have, and there's the castles, and there's a monarchy, and there's a rigid legal system and order. And you look at other places, and there isn't so much of that. And then you go, or at least they didn't develop it as quickly. And then you
Would you
go,
say that like Mayan societies didn't have order before
geez,
Spanish colonialism?
I mean, they were rolling bodies and heads down the pyramids to try
I
to
mean,
change the weather.
human sacrifice is always the thing that people point to try to discount the true sophistication of that culture. But if we were to take human sacrifice off the table, because of course it's wild, but also so is things like the Crusades. So are the way, like, white people aren't these like beautiful, always civilized people. Like, I'm pretty sure the Vikings were doing some pretty fucked up shit when they were raping and pillaging their way across Europe and stuff like that. So it's like, I would say white people do not have a monopoly on societies that have order and are successful at sustaining. What is a society meant to do? It's meant to sustain a large number of people. White people do not have a monopoly on that, and you can certainly point to white cultures that are absolutely uncivilized, absolutely violent, and
Like
absolutely
what?
barbaric. So,
Like what?
Viking culture,
Okay, Viking culture.
I
So
would
you
say that's
don't
a
think
great
that there's
example
enough
of it.
evidence to point to that whites
I'm
are
saying
the
I'm saying that
technological leader?
I'm saying that human. Oh, wait. Did you say I don't think there's enough evidence to point to why? I would say white people couldn't do anything without the Arabic numeral system. Like, I would say the incredible scientific advancements of people in the Middle East. Like, we literally, the numbers you use every single day are not a contribution of white people. Like, there are massive contributions to modern society that did not come from us. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to put one above the other or anything like that,
You
because
don't
I
think
just
white people would have
see
invented numbers? All the majority of the high mathematicians are all white.
is what
Yeah.
in white
We,
countries,
we
sure, but
invented
I'm pretty
computers. You don't
sure
think we would have you think we would have not invented computers if Middle Eastern people didn't invent
that's like
numbers?
saying you don't think African people would have gone to the moon eventually. Like, it's a weird, dumb, hypothetical argument.
Well,
We
yeah,
didn't invent
it's about
numbers.
speed. It's about
we
speed at the
didn't
end of the day.
we didn't invent numbers, and we wouldn't have invented computers without the contributions of those things. Also, there are mathematicians from, like, Africa and the Middle East are not these like barren wastelands with no universities and no scholarship and no intelligent people. Like there are, look at who is winning Nobel prizes. It's not always just white dudes. Like there are other people of other races making incredible contributions in
But
these
there's still
areas.
slavery there, and they still
What's
oppress
that?
women there. Like in South
We still
America and
oppress.
Africa and Middle East, they still have slavery. They still oppress women.
First of all, you're painting with such a broad brush. You would have to point to particular countries, because I've been to India and I didn't see any slavery there. Like I've been like
60%
to,
of people in India don't use toilets. Rural India,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay,
We can point to British colonialism and a lot of things that contribute to that. And I'm not saying
contributed
like,
to it. We tried to help them.
sure, sure. Anyways, I'm not making the argument that the world is equally developed, but
Okay,
why are you making the argument that the contributions of non-white people are not important to where we are at currently in modern times?
I was arguing
What
against you saying that white people don't have the monopoly on creating order in society.
It's just true. We don't have a monopoly on that. A monopoly means that you own pretty much all of it, when it's
Okay,
just not true. There are other societies have very complex, like there are shahs in the Middle East. We have kings and princes and stuff. Like have you seen Dubai? Like they have all these things and they've had it all throughout history. Like it might just be that you're not as aware of it, because of course you would be more interested in your own people's history and you've been to the UK and you've seen the castles and all that sort of stuff. But I've also been, like I've been to the Yucatan and I've seen pyramids that are created with
yeah,
math that I can't even begin to understand, and I have incredible
trigonometry.
correlation with the skies and things like that. Oh, I did take some trig. I did understand a little bit. That
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to try to understand at this phase of my life is probably a more accurate thing to say.
Okay, but you were arguing
But
against oligarchies before, but these places all have kings and are oligarchies.
I'm not, to be clear, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying you're making the argument that white and Western culture inherently creates this order that is good. And I'm saying, if you're going to point to, you said kings and castles and stuff like that, like if those are the things you're pointing to that say order good, then we can find examples of that in non-white societies. Would you say Japan and like China, like we it almost makes like it almost, I'm just going to say, it almost sounds like you're making a white supremacist argument, which I would hate to believe that that's what you're doing.
Okay.
Because I would hate to believe that I found myself on a podcast that's making that argument.
I would hate that too.
Yeah.
Uh, but it is, you know, something that happens a lot to a lot of arguments on the right. Is immediately people get called white supremacist whenever we. But again, like I said, we're at the end of the tunnel here, where you end up at this place of is it ethical to even discuss a racial hierarchy, and it gets so squirrely so quickly. You know what I'm saying? And
I think it's ethical to discuss one so long as you look at the
evidence,
global and historical
yeah,
context of
evidence,
creating those hierarchies. Like here in
yes,
America, we can say without a doubt there is a hierarchy where white people have the greatest concentration of wealth, the greatest concentration of opportunity, and stuff like that. But to say that's because there's something more inherent to white people that makes them able to extract this wealth and attract this wealth and get these opportunities, and not say, oh, wait, actually, the majority of people of color in America were locked out from these kinds of opportunities until, I don't know, the
well,
1960s. And many of them
well,
are still living in circumstances where they're still practically locked out of it. So it's
in the
like,
West,
you know,
in the West, which
and
which
yeah,
isn't their country though. Like, what about in their own country? Because in their own country, they weren't locked out of anything. They just couldn't create
Nigeria is
order.
incredibly prosperous. Like they're like this idea that there is not order in Africa. Where are you getting that idea from?
I watched a cabinet meeting the other day of it. It was it was an African place where one of them threw a chair at the other one in the
Dude,
political meeting.
okay. In America, someone like I could point to so much disorderly conduct. I mean, like we've had, not currently, but at points in times in American history, we have had times where American politicians are literally dueling with one another with guns. We have to remember
Yeah,
that
but not
because these
now.
countries, if these countries have been left to their own devices to develop without having colonialism come in to extract things, who knows how sophisticated they would currently be. But considering that they are often, because they're still dealing with the
Yeah,
fallout of colonialism, they are literally, to think about, to compare uh, a nation that is somewhat like still in its growing pains to the countries that were able to grow because they extracted wealth from that country. Like, it's
but
okay that they're currently in their throwing chair eras.
but Africa's
I'm sure they're going to
older.
sort it out.
But Africa's older than the UK. And then at the end of the day, it's because like what you're alluding to is a lot of unfairness. You're saying that what results in these, I guess, displacements of where
You're
people are at
saying Africa is older
economically.
than the UK because you're arguing that for the like uh,
No,
the
I'm
theory of
you
human
you were
evolution
arguing
that we all came out of. No, I'm asking for clarification because you said Africa is older than the UK, and I'm just like trying to figure out. By that you mean, because
people.
like yeah, well, are you saying because there's like a lot of arguments that are human,
Well, you were
Homo
saying that
sapien,
we came
whatever.
and we came down, and that colonialism hurt them and slowed them down. When
Yes.
a younger civilization is making business deals or whatever you want to call it with an older civilization, shouldn't the older civilization have been able to kind of dictate? Like why did the other people dictate?
Well,
Why
I
did
would
we
say a
create the
lot of it has to
unfairness?
do with a differences in value system. So there's
Okay.
a big difference between the individualist values that came up out of, and I don't know enough about British history to know why it's there, but I know enough to know that Western societies have developed a more individualist and extractionist kind of ethos versus other societies. And here's where I'm just going to say, like, I'm not an expert in the history of the African continent, but I do know that often those societies are more collective and are more communal. So it could even be that they wouldn't even have the thought of, oh, these deals might be bad for us or something like that. And it's just, I don't know. I'm just kind of not on board with the idea that uh, that what we have developed in the West as white people or whatever is inherently good. Like
Okay.
it
Yeah, yeah.
isn't,
I
and
get that.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
and
Well,
and
thank
so
you.
yeah,
Thank you so much for all your opinions. I definitely see where you're coming from. I totally understand. I think you are right about a lot of things for sure.
yeah. I'm
Okay.
definitely more fun to talk to about comedy. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious, right? Because you say you watch a lot of podcasts about, the making of stand up and art and other things like that. Um, what got you into stand up comedy? So, like, you're a wedding photographer. So every day, as a woman, you got to be tortured by videoing other people's best day of their life and things like that. What got you going in stand up? Like, how did you start, and what inspired you to really take the leap into making it a part of
Yeah.
your persona?
Uh, to be clear, being a wedding photographer is the coolest job ever. It's not torture at all. I love
Nice.
what I do. Like it's like I can't. It's
Well,
honest. I think the only better job for me would be stand up comedian because it's just like it's so crazy. My job is to go be with people on one of the greatest days of their life where they're so happy and they're dedicated to this thing that I think is supreme over all, which
the
is
opposite
love.
of a police officer.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh God. Those guys suck. But anyways, but yeah, I love what I do. It's really fun, and it kind of like works well for how my brain works too. Like there's a lot of novelty in what I do, which my brain really responds well to.
Yeah,
But it's just like such a. If anyone's watching this and they're engaged, I love what I do. Please hire me to photograph your wedding so that I can eat.
for
But
sure.
anyways, I'm just like I don't want anyone to think it's torture. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but in terms of what inspired me, it's weird because like I don't really have a time I can think of where I did not want to be a stand-up comedian in some form or that I wasn't interested in stand-up comedy in some way. I literally wrote my eighth grade career paper on being a stand-up comedian which I wish I still had it, so I could see what kind of grade I got on it. Something tells me probably a low grade because that's not very realistic, but whatever.
Grading
But
systems are purely unethical. They're mean. I don't agree with anything of grading.
I mean, I always got really high grades, so I'm supportive of the grading system because they tell me I'm
Elitist.
better than other people. So yeah, exactly.
You're an elitist.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. But I worked hard for that summa cum laude. But anyways,
Oh, geez.
yeah. But I
Did
wrote
you
that eighth
actually
grade
get
career.
that?
Yeah, I'm summa cum laude from University of Michigan.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I won the math award.
That's great. I was good at math when I had to take it, but I never enjoyed it. My dad's the math guy in the family.
Yeah. Yeah, math is
Um,
racist.
uh, I don't know. Math is just not fun, is all I'll say.
Yeah.
My dad would really be offended by that. He'd
Yeah.
be like, "Math's fun."
Yeah.
Um,
What does your dad do
but
for a
yeah,
living again?
he's a nuclear engineer. Well, now he's retired. So, but he's really bad at being retired. So, in his retirement, he is a school bus driver
Yeah.
because he likes big machines, and he also got roped into being the kind of like the groundskeeper for they go to the Catholic parish in the town. My dad lives here in Michigan now too. He moved up here, and so he's the groundskeeper for the cemetery for their like little Catholic parish in their because it's right across the street from where he lives. So
Fair enough. He's
so it's
one of
kind of
us.
nice.
He's an engineer.
Yeah, yeah, he has, and he's completely, he has no college degree. Like he
So
kind of
what do you mean though? Yeah,
self-taught.
because I saw that one joke of yours
Yeah,
where you say he's a self-taught nuclear engineer.
yeah.
I don't know if that's
So
really a thing. What do you mean?
it is. So it is a thing. I'll explain how. So my dad was always really gifted at math. He's like one of those classic, like my dad is definitely also neurodivergent. And so one of those classic cases of people where it's like, maybe wasn't getting like good grades across the board, but like always straight A's in math, just had a real mind for it. When I was young, if I was like learning a new math concept and I needed his help and he knew a shortcut, even if I wasn't allowed to use the shortcut in school, he would like require me to learn the shortcut before he would show me the way that I was like allowed to use it.
Nepotism.
Like,
Nepotism.
yeah, it's like,
You're
well, it's
standing
kind
on
of
the
cool.
shoulders of your white parents. That's
No.
privilege. That's unethical.
I mean, I've acknowledged multiple times throughout this podcast that I'm privileged. I'll never deny that.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly privileged in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And so, but when he graduated from high school, shortly after that, he enlisted in the Navy. And when you enlist in the Navy, they like give you tests to basically like see where you might be good. And he tested into nuke school, which is basically like, because there's a lot of in the Navy, there's nuclear aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. Nuclear physics are incredibly relevant to the US Navy. And so they need people with that kind of mind. So he tested into nuke school and he was in nuke school in the Navy. And he was just like completely in love with the material, totally enraptured by it, like fascinated by it. And he was the teacher was not teaching it at a pace quick enough for his for his preferences. And so he essentially would take the books home, go way further ahead on his own time to learn more of the material because he just had this like voracious appetite for it. And I think he was even or this might have been in high school, that like in high school he was like kind of like the teacher just like was like let him do like independent study during math basically because he was learning faster than the other kids. So that's what I mean by self-taught nuclear engineer, is that like when he was put in that nuke school, he was just so interested in it that he didn't wait for the teacher to teach him. He just taught himself.
Fair enough.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a very smart family, it sounds like.
Yeah, I really like, my dad is definitely like someone I really deeply admire, and he's just like always had one of those brains that can, you're an engineer, so you probably can relate to this. He's just like got a brain that can fix problems or come up with solutions. I was just there like a couple weeks back, and he had built this crazy contraption on the back of his lawnmower to collect the leaves after they were mulched so that it could empty from the bottom, because he realized pulling the bags out from the top as he's getting older is going to be too difficult for him. It's got like a hydraulic lift. my stepmom designed a decal for it, which he like called the Leafa Chopra. Like he's very, like he's just a big kid that wants to like play with machines and build, grown up Legos that help make his lawn care time easier. So,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Awesome. Sounds like a classic
yeah,
dude. That's good.
yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah. But he likes Trump, so he's evil.
Yeah, he's no, not at all. I wouldn't say. Like I said, I believe the average Trump supporter is probably much closer to my comrade in the class war than my enemy. I love that parable of
What does comrade mean?
like my ally, my friend, someone who's actually on the same side of the actual bigger conflict that's really happening in humanity. But I have to be careful saying that kind of stuff because normally when people start saying things like the only war is class war, the CIA will kill them, and so it's like MLK. They let him keep talking until he started saying when he started saying things like the poor white man and the Negro have more in common than they have, different from one another. That was when they really started to watch him because that's what they never want you to realize is that it all comes back to class. But yeah, so I don't demonize these people in any way. Also, like I said, on a spiritual level, my father and I are a part of the same thing, and so I can't make him. I wouldn't make him evil for his beliefs. I would say that he's been a victim of some pretty bad information. Also, he's a baby boomer. There was like a lot of lead in the air and stuff when they were kids. We got to be kind to them. Their brains they were eating lead paint off the walls, so we can't get mad at them for their bad takes on things. Their brains aren't as good.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
So yeah, but I would never, I am opposed to anything that paints with a broad brush, even if it's painting with a broad brush of people who are so ideologically opposed to me and maybe holding up things that I find absolutely abhorrent. And of course they are. Not
Yeah,
maybe, definitely are.
yeah. So
But
what does he like stand up? Because we were talking about what exactly got you into stand up.
yeah,
And what do you think that is?
I just like I always put on Comedy Central when I was a kid. It's not like my dad was not taking me to stand-up shows. We were watching the X-Files together. We were not watching stand-up comedy together. And so
Yeah,
it was just, I mean, this sounds like big and high and mighty, but like because I've already hinted at it, like I'm obviously a person who, while I don't have a particular religion that I adhere to, I'm a big believer in God, and I see like, and I don't think of God as like Sky Santa, like sitting on a throne on a cloud or anything. I kind of see it as something I can't even really describe. But it just feels like a weird desire that was kind of like put into my life by God, like because I just can't remember a time when I wasn't interested in it, and I don't remember this like moment that made me go, oh, now I love it. It's just like something I've
yeah,
always loved.
yeah. Well, it's such a
And
stand up comedy is such a direct route to helping people. Sometimes I always say that it's a sense, in a sense, it's a person that is trying to cure other people's depression. So, and I can
I
see that
mean,
you're like that.
yeah,
Like you're a person who wants to help. You want to help everybody, and I think that that's awesome about you. And I think it's awesome about all comedians. And
yeah.
that's probably why you like it.
Laughter is very good for people, that's for sure. And I love to laugh. I'm a generous laugher. I've been joking that because some of my friends are like recording specials and stuff, and just locally here, and I'm like, I should charge them money to go to their special and laugh because I laugh so loud. Like,
Yeah.
but I just
We
think I
ultimately,
don't. Yeah,
sorry, I was going to say, yeah,
it's a
ultimately laughing is just kind of like emotional utopianism in a sense, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
of course,
It's
you'd love that.
certainly one of the more elevated states that you can be in. But it also can, if you've ever had those moments where just something dark and abysmal, you're like caught, maybe you recently lost a friend or your pet is sick or whatever, and you're in this like dark place, and then something happens that makes you laugh. And that's like the best possible thing that could happen to you in that moment because it does just so instantly shift your energy and
Yeah,
everything. So I
takes you out
really
of
do.
it.
Yeah, laughter is just
Yeah.
like, I think,
So
like
who are some of your
a
favorite
huge gift.
yeah. So who are some of your favorite people to watch? Like you said, you would always throw on Comedy Central. I
Yeah.
don't know who some of your people are. Like tell me some more
Yeah,
about some of
I
the
can tell
people
you.
that
Yeah.
you've listened to and brought you to here, cuz I could tell
Yeah.
you all mine, but I'm curious more about what yours are.
Yeah. When I was young, so when I was a kid and like flicking on Comedy Central or whatever, if it was ever Mitch Hedberg, I was going to watch. And if it was ever Maria Bamford, I was going to watch. So I would say when I was young, those are two probably of the biggest comedic voices and influences on me. And still, I mean, Mitch is gone. Rest in peace. I love him dearly. But Maria is still with us and still creating incredible, some of my favorite weird wacky stand-up specials. Like she did a stand-up special where she was just doing stand-up to her mom and dad in her living room, like, and
No
that is,
way.
yeah, she's just like, and so those are big influences when I was a kid. And then now that I'm older, some people that like I would say have meant a lot to me as like an adult, their comedy that I really love is I would say Tig Notaro. Obviously, I already mentioned her. I think of when she came out and did a stand-up special. Literally, like her mom died, she got diagnosed with cancer. A few days later she did a stand-up set, not a special but a set at a club where she just talked about both those things, so raw, so from like the like live from the scene kind of comedy on some of the hardest things that you could be going through. And Louis C.K. like had the audio recording and put it out. That kind of like, not that Tig wasn't respected in her own right before then, but I just remember that was the thing that really made me go like, oh my God, this woman is brave in a way that brave and vulnerable in a way that I really admire. And then she also, after she had her double mastectomy, she's done like a special topless with her scars, and I just so brave, like someone who I just think is like she's a real badass. And her stuff is so strange. One of her specials, she spends like the last 20 minutes saying she's going to bring out the Indigo Girls. And she does it for so long that you think there's no way the Indigo Girls could possibly be coming out. This is just a crazy bit. And then she brings out the Indigo Girl. So it's amazing. She's wild and wacky, and I love her.
Yeah.
And then Neil Brennan, I love Neil Brennan because he's someone who, like me, didn't start doing stand up until later in his life. He obviously had a long comedy career. He's Dave Chappelle's writing partner, if you're not aware. He's one of the white guys with like a BET Soul Award or whatever,
Yeah.
because he won one for his not a soul, but some sort of, he has some sort of BET award for his work on the Chappelle Show, which makes her laugh so hard. Which, if
Yeah.
you don't know, if Canadians don't know, BET is Black Entertainment Television, and
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
fact that
So he's a rare
yeah.
example of where black people exploited white people.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure, Chappelle is also a genius in his own right, but Brennan is so. A lot of people don't know how much he, is to credit for some of the really great moments in Chappelle Show. They're just creative collaboration was great. But when he started doing stand up, he'd started a little bit later in his life, which, I'm 37 and I didn't start stand up until I was 36. I'd done like a good amount of public speaking before that, performance and stuff, but and improv comedy and whatever. But proper stand up didn't start until I was 36, right? Yeah. No, 35, sorry. And then
So you've been doing it for
and
about 2 years.
no, about a year and a half closer. My year
Mm.
birthday was in February, so not even a year and a half.
Okay,
Am I
okay.
doing math right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I might
yeah.
have been 36. I don't know how old
Yeah,
I
that
was.
makes sense.
Time doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
but yeah, he
So
did
comedy.
three.
So I'm curious, a
Yeah,
comedian,
go ahead.
right? Because we've talked a lot today about like what a comedian is exactly and what their main goal should be. And at the beginning, you were talking a lot about how, you're just a court jester and
Yeah.
and that's what a comedian is, right? But then yet you like Tig Notaro and you like her for all these other reasons outside of being purely objectively funny. Um, so is there any way that on the show here today we could get you to admit another comedian who's purely objectively funnier than Tig Notaro? Because
Funnier than, oh,
if
well,
they're just trying to
once
be
again,
clowns,
we're back to hierarchies, right? Like I wouldn't even necessarily use words like funnier, this, that, or other, because it's so subjective. Like there's no universal truth of what funny is, you know.
But let's say they were all, if we ranked them as court jesters and just trying to get, laughs per minute. Is there anybody that, like, do you think Tig Notaro is the
Oh,
funniest?
oh, for laughs per minute, no.
Because
Like
Mitch
if you're
Hedberg
just
was always
going,
good for that.
yeah, Mitch Hedberg is a great. If you're judging on laugh, my brain can do that. If we're like thinking about laughs per minute, I would say Tig has some bits,
Yeah,
and
her
I think these are
special is very
beautiful.
long and tedious. I've watched
Yes,
it many times, all of
yeah,
them.
I think this is a beautiful thing, but she definitely has some bits that make you wait for the payoff. And if that's
Yeah.
not your cup of tea, it's fine. But I love that. Sometimes I just really love that stuff where it's just like it's gone on too long. There's something about the silliness and the absurdity of it that really makes me laugh. So, but but in terms of uh, who's currently alive making comedy, because I would say Mitch Hedberg is probably the highest laughs per minute of the people who are important to me. But people who are like currently alive and making comedy, like a laughs per minute guy that I really admire would be like Rory Scovel. He's also in like he's on my Mount Rushmore of comedians for sure. I admire a lot of things about Rory, especially he does a lot of improvised stand up. So he'll just go up for an hour with no idea on what he's going to say. And it somehow will all become so much of it will be funny and good. And, but he's also just like, makes me laugh really hard, makes me laugh often. And he's got a good, like, if John Mulaney is a little bit too turned up to 11 for you in terms of energy, I would say Rory is doing something a little bit more punk rock with that dial just turned down just a wee bit.
Fair enough.
And so,
Yeah, just like
yeah,
what we did here today, so we're doing the same thing as him. So I
yeah.
guess before I let you go, and I'll just thank you again for today. Today, I thought it was pretty good podcast. If you had to tell me what you hate most about Trump, if you could bring me over, if you could bring somebody over to your side as to
Uh-huh.
why they would hate Trump, what would you say?
Ooh. Like what do I think is the most toxic quality of Trump and Trumpism? Is
Yeah,
that
in
kind of
terms of
like the
being a
question?
president and whatever you
Yeah.
define a president as what they should be and do, why is
Hmm.
he a bad president?
I would say that his uh, life experiences have not led him to develop a deep capacity for empathy. And I think the job of president is served well when someone has a deep capacity for empathy. But I also think anyone who wants to be president should probably be looked at and examined because I think there's something about saying, like, I don't think you should get to nominate yourself for president. I think like 20 people should be like, no, I think Rick should do it. And then Rick kind of has to be president. Like, I don't think we should elect anyone who wants to be president. We should elect someone who would be good at it, but is reluctant to take the job. Like Dolly Parton would probably be a really good president. But that's just my kind of, there's something about being like, yeah, I want to be the big boss. That's just like, oh, okay, there's something bad with your brain actually. And like I
Yeah,
would say that for like Democrat or Republican.
yeah,
But in terms of like what I think is causing Trump to cause the most harm and the most suffering, if we want to limit suffering, I would say his life experiences have not led him to develop a deep capacity for empathy.
fair enough. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
It does feel like you're making an argument for Vladimir Putin a little bit, though. But
Oh, wait, I don't even know what he's up to. I'm going to be honest.
well, I guess you were advocating for a type of a segregated or a classist democracy where these votes here because you got them from here matter because your party wanted you, and then it seems like you want a limited democracy in a way, which all of a sudden then you're at an autocracy, which is Russia. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
no, no. I just think I don't think it would be an oligarchy saying Rick should do it. I think like ideally, like I said, I want us to be in much smaller structures anyway. But that was mostly just me making a joke. If we're going to make a legitimate comparison to the
Yeah,
autocracy in Russia, we're a little bit beyond my depths. I need
yeah.
to,
Fair enough.
consult with someone at the State Department in
Yeah,
order. I
fair
don't
enough.
even know who this is true. Like I don't even know who the current. This is how much I don't care for what politics is presently and how much I see certain aspects of it as futile. I don't know who the current Speaker of the House is in America. Like, I don't even know.
Some
I'm
blonde
like,
girl. I'm sure it's just some blonde
is
girl
it? Oh,
just to dress
well,
it up, make it look like a birthday cake.
I think it's probably based on America's way to do it. Speaker of the House is probably some white guy,
Yeah.
but they put blonde girls in the like
Oh, yeah,
they
the
make
press
her like press
secretary. Yeah,
secretary.
that's what I.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
sorry, I got them mixed
yeah.
up. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, honestly, this was so great. Thank you so
yeah,
much for coming on the podcast. I hope we can talk again. I think we just scratched the surface here today.
yeah. Thanks
To
for
conclude,
rolling with
I think
me
you're great. I
being late.
think you're brave. I think that you're talented. And
Oh, thanks.
I wish you the best in your pursuits of stand up and stuff like that, and podcasts as you continue to develop as a podcaster. I think you
Yeah,
could be really good at it because you're very passionate about your beliefs, and you're very smart. So, yeah, thank you very much for your time today.
yeah. Right on.
Okay, and that's
Enjoy.
Heather Jouet. You guys, you can
Yeah,
find her at Heather J Everyday on Instagram. Go book her for photography or comedy at her website, Heather Jouet with two T's.com.
yeah.
And all right,
Mm-hmm.
that's Canadian Talk out.
All right.